Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Miles, I use they them pronouns, and I like to talk about books. So today I am going to be doing my April wrap up, which I know this is going to be up really late, so please forgive me for that. But I read a lot of good stuff in April, so I still wanted to talk about it. I read 13 books, and I think out of that, 8 of them were 4-star reads, and I think I had a few 5 stars in there as well. So it was a really good reading month. I really enjoyed a lot of different books, and I'm excited to talk to you about them today. You may notice that I have a change of scenery. I am out of school for the summer, and I'm living with my girlfriend all summer, so I am in her cute little room. I've added a few touches, this little guy. But yeah, so I am just going to get into it today because I moved and had all of my stuff, like it's all in boxes, it's all in different places right now. I don't really have any of the books that I read in April on me, so pretty much everything is just going to be put up right there, so it's going to be a very picture heavy video. So I usually like to have as many books as possible with me, so I'm sorry about that in advance. It is going to be a bit of a long one. I made my little coffee. I've been trying to make more coffee at home recently, and I got that fancy cold foam stuff, and like this looks so beautiful. So I have my little coffee and sit back, get a drink, get a snack, and talk about April reads with me. So first I read Mycelium Wasoni by Brian Blomerth, and I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. It is one of the most beautifully illustrated graphic novels that I have ever read. I'll put some photos up because it is wonderful. The illustrations are stunning. The story follows a real couple, Valentina and Gordon Wasoni, and their popularization and research behind psychedelic mushrooms in the West. And that's kind of where my problems get into it a little bit, where it's very obvious, and they make it clear in the book as well, that they are kind of appropriating the use of these psychedelics from indigenous Mexican communities. And the story is aware of that, but it gives us that and then still continues to kind of idolize these figures when, you know, in the beginning their research is really interesting and really inspiring and really cool and comes from Valentina's cultural roots, and it's really interesting. But then as their research furthers, they go to Mexico and approach this woman that does like rituals for the local community involving psychedelics, and kind of she asked them not to use any of this and not to record anything, and they just like blatantly disregarded her. And like this is a real thing that happened, and the book just didn't really treat it like it was an issue. Like it presented that they did that, and you can tell that we are supposed to see it as like, oh, this is a bad thing that they did, but it's never like clearly shown that, like, I don't know, it's never really seen as a character flaw of these people. And that was really fucking frustrating. It should have critiqued their characters a little bit more, I think. But it does get the 4-star rating from me for these illustrations and like this beautiful reading experience. And my problems with it don't start until like the last like 15 pages. The rest of this book was wonderful and I really enjoyed it, so I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. But that is Mycelium Wasoni. So next I read something that has been on my TBR for so long, and that was Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark. And this book was wonderful. I also rated it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was so unique. It offers an alternate history of 1915 after the movie The Birth of a Nation was released. And it follows this woman and a group of people that are killing these demons called Ku Kluxes that have like infiltrated local KKK organizations and are slowly turning the people in these organizations into demons. Crazy idea. It is pulled off so well. This world is so immersive. Obviously, it's very close to our real world and real events that happened in that time period, but it adds like this like sci-fi, fantastical, dark fairy tale route where there's swords and murder and like the chosen one type like tropes, and it works so well. It is such a great book. All of these characters were so cool and badass, and I really enjoyed reading about them. And overall, it was just a great book. It has been sitting on my TBR for years. It was also a pretty short read. I don't know why it took me so long to get to it. If you like this description, if you sound interested, if it's been on your TBR forever, I would definitely recommend checking it out because this was really worth the read. 4 out of 5 from me. So after that, I read Where the Drowned Girls Go by Seanan McGuire. And this is the 7th book in the Wayward Children series. If you don't know about this series, it has taken BookTube by storm for like years now. I love this series. I have never rated a book in this series 5 stars, but I've rated multiple of them 4 stars, and I just always really enjoy reading them. So I was really excited for this one. If you don't know what the Wayward Children series is, essentially it follows kids, mostly teenagers, who have ended up at Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, and what that means is at some point in their lives they came across a door to another world, went through the door, and were in this completely like alternate universe. Each book follows a character in their respective world or follows them once they get back and join Eleanor West's home to kind of rehabilitate them and hopefully find them a way to go back to their former worlds where they like truly belong. That was like a big explanation. Hopefully that makes sense. This book follows Cora, who has been a recurring character in the series, and we know from past books that she went to like an underwater world and there were mermaids and she was a mermaid, and it was just so cute like hearing about that in the past. She is a fat teenager and it follows a lot of her like experiences with that and like body issues and worrying about what other people think, where it's like she is happy with the way that she looks and the way that she is, but other people around her just like refuse to let that happen. But when she was in the alternate world, she was so accepted and always felt at home and no one cared about her body. And so this book follows her going to another school, transferring away from Eleanor West's home because she wants to just forget the world because she hasn't been able to find a way to return to it. And this other school is a lot harsher, more focused on forgetting, kind of like gaslighting the kids into thinking that they're crazy and that they never went to this other world when it's like obvious that they did. Anyways, she moves there and the book kind of just follows that experience and kind of like the bullying that she faces because of her body. And obviously I won't go much more into it because it's a pretty short book, so I don't want you to like know how it ends or anything, but I really liked this book. I gave it a 3.5. Sometimes the Wayward Children series just gets like a little too whimsical for me, and I kind of had that in this book. I like the ones that go a little darker, and this definitely was dark at points, but I don't know, I just didn't vibe with it all the way. However, I can really see the importance of this book, and I loved all the body positive and like body neutral content in it. So I loved that. I think that is really important for middle grade and YA readers. So I was really happy to see that. I think it was handled so well. So I did give it a 3.5 because I really enjoyed it. It just wasn't perfect for me, and I think that's just kind of like my age, and like obviously I am not meant to be a middle grade reader, and sometimes that's kind of apparent in the Wayward Children series, but besides that, I really did enjoy this book and I would definitely recommend it. I don't know. Love the Wayward Children series, did not love this book as much, but there are lots of great things about it. So that was Where the Drowned Girls Go. So next is my first 5-star of the month. This book fucking lives in my head now, and that was Hangsaman by Shirley Jackson. This book was so good. This book was so good. Originally, I rated it a 4 out of 5, but it has just been like stuck in there ever since. It's definitely a 5-star. I fucking love Shirley Jackson. I've rated all 3 of the novels that I've read by her 5 stars. I've also read Hill House and We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Shirley Jackson is definitely one of my favorite authors. Something about her writing is very classic, but accessible, and feels like it was written like 5 years ago, just set in the 50s. All of her work feels like incredibly relevant and interesting and compelling and like suits our time right now really well. I fucking loved this book. Hangs a Man was amazing. It follows a 17-year-old girl named Natalie as she moves away from this like weird family dynamic, unhealthy family dynamic that she has. She moves away to college and kind of gets in these relationships and situations that mirror that unhealthy dynamic at home. Trigger warning for some essay in this. It is very short, like the scene itself isn't graphic at all. That's kind of the point. But the rest of it and the trauma surrounding this essay scene permeates the entire rest of the book. And I have even seen reviews where people don't know that that happened, like didn't think about it, usually men. So it's definitely something that you kind of have to look for to find it. So it's definitely like not super graphic or anything like that. And I thought it was such a great way of handling essay. Like, holy shit, for the 50s, it treats it in such a progressive way. It like mirrors the mental processes that you go through after a traumatic event, where you are just pushing it out of there. It's never mentioned directly again. And to me, that's the point. It was just so wonderful. And it focuses on like teenage girls and their like harmful relationships with men and how we seek out what hurts us and just like all of this shit. This book is haunting, it's surreal, and it's dreamlike, and it's uncomfortable, but in like the best way possible. I don't think this book will be for everybody, but it really hit home for me specifically. I love Shirley Jackson's writing. If you haven't checked out Shirley Jackson, I would probably recommend starting with Hill House and then diving into this afterwards. But oh my god, if you do like Shirley Jackson, a lot of people don't talk about this book. And I don't know why, because it was so fucking good. So, would definitely recommend this and all of her other work if you haven't read anything by her before. Next, I finally got to mark this book as read, and this was just my textbook for the Romanticism class that I took this past semester, and it was the Longman Anthology of British Literature, The Romantics. And I rated this a 4 out of 5 because I really enjoyed like most of what we read in here, which is rare for like an English textbook. A lot of it just goes like right over my head, but I loved Romanticism. We read from poets such as William Blake, who was fucking crazy, and would definitely recommend reading A Marriage of Heaven and Hell if you haven't read that before. It's crazy. The book, the recent novel, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, is like really heavily entangled with William Blake's work, and that was really interesting. We read Robert Burns, William Wordsworth, Charlotte Smith, Percy Shelley, and a bunch of other authors. My favorite works from this were Beachy Head by Charlotte Smith is a beautiful fucking poem. Lives in my head rent-free. Also, Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which I am going to talk about like right after this. And then also Keats's Odes. Everybody knows about them, but holy shit, they are beautiful. Those were some of my favorite works from this anthology. I'm not gonna like tell you that I recommend it. I recommend those works and kind of all the authors that I mentioned just now. But yeah, it felt so good to finally mark this as read. This anthology is like 1,400 pages long or something like that. So it was very satisfying. It's my longest book of the year. I didn't read every single thing in here, but I definitely read a solid like at least 3/4. So I'm proud of myself for getting through it. I really enjoyed this class. And so yeah, I rated it a 4 out of 5 because I usually don't rate textbooks, but this one was especially like exceptional. So yeah. Next, I reread Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. This time though, I read this wonderful annotated edition from the 70s. I fucking loved it. I read the original poem next to these beautiful illustrations. I'm gonna put some up because holy shit, some of my favorite illustrations. So I read the poem like that, and then after that is an annotated version of the poem. And I wrote a paper on this poem about folkloric and superstitious influences in it. So I read this whole book. I really enjoyed the annotations. They helped with my paper a lot. This poem, if you haven't heard about it before, it follows this young man that's on his way to a wedding, and he gets stopped by this strange old man that wants to tell him a story. And it's so much more than that. It follows themes of death, sin, seafaring, man's wanting to play God. It was so good, just as good the second time around, if not better. I would recommend this poem to fans of The Lighthouse by Robert Eggers. And maybe that doesn't sound like it makes sense, but very like similar vibes in terms of just batshit crazy men at sea. If anyone else has like watched that and read this, I feel like you'll get it. If you liked The Lighthouse, check out The Rime of the Ancient Mariner is what I'm trying to say. I love this poem. It has so much like rich folkloric influence in it, so it was really fun to write about. And I don't know, I love it. I gave it a 5 out of 5 second time around. Okay, next I read Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen. I have a lot of thoughts on this book. A lot of thoughts on this book. I ended up rating it a 4 out of 5. However, this book makes me sad. I feel like there's some wasted potential here that I need to talk through because it hurts. You ever read a book and like the first half is like the best thing you've ever read, and then the latter half of it is like not as great, and then the end picks up a little bit, but like you have like a hole in your heart for what could have been? That's how I feel about Crossroads. This was a huge, almost 600-page novel. It was almost like, I think it was like 23 hours of audiobook, so I did listen to the audiobook. And people have been calling it like the next great American novel, which I was like very interested in, which is strange because I've never read something that's supposed to be a great American novel. For some reason, this called out to me. It is set in the 70s in Chicago, and it follows this very dysfunctional family, and it has really strong religious ties. So the dad is like an assistant pastor of a local church, and first of all, everyone in this family is fucked up. Everyone has secrets that they are keeping from each other, and it is so stressful. Like, oh my god. The dad is a pastor and he wants a divorce and he's not attracted to his wife anymore, and he's like considering infidelity. He's on like the edge of infidelity. And then the mom has like this secret life from her past that like nobody knows about. And like the older son, who's away at college, just like broke this girl's heart and randomly decided to join the army even though he like doesn't fucking believe in it at all. And then the younger son is like a prodigy and he's so fucking smart, and he's selling drugs to 7th graders. And then the daughter just like is so tired of being like pastor's daughter and like looked down upon, and everyone thinks she's so perfect. She's so fucking tired of it. She wants to like be crazy. So there's a lot of drama going on, and there's a lot of tension, and like each family member has something against another one. And so it is an incredibly like tense and dramatic book, and I loved it. It was very character driven, and I just loved getting into all of the characters' heads. So like what I love so much about the first half is that it mostly focuses on the kids, and I just related to all of them in like little ways really heavily. And I think that's why I enjoyed it more. And then the latter half kind of focuses on the adults in the family and like their relationships, like the husband, the dad, and the mom. So I don't know, their relationship didn't interest me as much as the kids, and like kind of the first half felt like it could have been its own book, and the climax a climax happened and everything was going crazy, and I was like, oh my god, how is this gonna get resolved? And then like it kind of just like dropped it and moved on to the parents for a little bit. And I was like, I need to hear about these kids. Like, I need to hear about these characters that I was so invested in. And it didn't really wrap up with them until the end. The end definitely got better because it kind of came back to the family as a whole. But I don't know. The middle of it just like did not hit. It definitely dragged a little bit. A lot of people have said this book was too long, and like I don't really agree with that. I just think the focus in the middle should have shifted. But like, I don't know. I enjoyed this book so much. I listened to the audiobook, and during like all the fights and like conversations, I was so invested. I felt like I was watching a movie. I like casted it in my head too. Like I was really into this book, and it was like all I could think of for a little bit. And then like the middle to end happened, and I was just like, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't as like phenomenal as the first half. So I don't know. It was really great. I loved this book, but it was just a little bit of a letdown. If you're into historical fiction, I would definitely recommend checking this out. I don't think it's for everyone though. Like this is very much like, it feels like a dad book. Like this feels like a book you would give to your dad and he would really, really enjoy. Like if your dad loves like John Steinbeck, even though I've never read him before, it feels like he would like this. So I don't know. If that sounds like your thing, check it out. It's not for everybody. It's very big and character driven, and a lot of the negative reviews were like, this is fucking boring. I understand, but I loved this book. 4 out of 5. Next, I read Matrix by Lauren Groff. I didn't put this together until like yesterday, but I also read Florida by Lauren Groff, and I do really enjoy her writing. I gave this book a 4 out of 5. It follows a girl named Marie. She is 17 years old. It takes place in the 12th century, and she is just like a lot. Like she's very loud and tall and bold and intimidating, and people just can't fucking handle her. So she's sent off to England to become a nun, and it follows her through like her entire life from 17 until like 70 or something. Pretty old. And she becomes like the center of this convent and eventually the leader of it, and it follows just her whole life story. Also important to mention, this is a lesbian book. Lesbian nuns. So I really fucked with that. I don't read much like religious inspired stories. I didn't really grow up with religion, and I like don't really understand like references and stuff. You don't need that for this book. It was wonderful. It was so good and like feminist. I didn't think a book about like nuns could be like that. But this was like a wonderful read, and it was so funny and just had like such a strong narrative voice that I would definitely recommend it. Once again, if you're into historical fiction, if you like lesbian nuns, if you like tall, sexy, butch women, yeah, check it out. I didn't really put this together either, which I'm like ashamed of, but this is like a fictionalized account of Marie de France's life, and she was a poet from the 12th century that wrote these 12 beautiful French lays, and those are both basically like long poems, stories, fairy tales kind of, and I actually did a lot of work with her story Bisque Levrette last year. I wrote a paper on how it handles like transformation and disability. It's essentially a werewolf story. Really interesting. I loved picking apart that poem. So that was just like a cool little like literary connection. It's definitely not the focus of the story. Like, you don't need to know about her to read this. Like, it is so like small that you can even like skip over it. Like, I didn't really think about it when I read it. And then I read some reviews and I was like, wait, like, I have worked with Marie DeFrance's work like pretty extensively before. So that was cool. I love being able to connect things to like academia. It makes me very happy. So yeah, I rated this a 4 out of 5. Would definitely recommend. It was a great reading experience. As I said before, like, very strong narrative voice, very fun, and just like wonderful. Check it out. Next up, another disappointment. This is my lowest rated book of the month, and that is Batman Arkham Asylum. So, I haven't talked about this on this channel. I saw the new Batman movie like 2 months ago, and it has like taken over my fucking head. I think about it all the time. I'm 20 now. I'm embracing the cringe. I am liking things unapologetically, and Batman is one of them. So, this is the first Batman comic I've read. I have never been interested in superheroes before, but a switch has been flipped. And I was really excited for this one. It is illustrated by Dave McKean, who did the illustrations for the Sandman comics. Maybe he just did the covers. Maybe he did illustrations sometimes. Anyways, at least the covers for the Sandman comics, which I'm familiar with, and those are by Neil Gaiman. So just a little association. Dave McKean, beautiful art in this book. I'm gonna like put some up here. Really creepy and weird, and like it was painted with elements of collage in it. So the art style was wonderful. It was really great. However, in story, this is lacking. It's like a weird dream. So like the essential like story of this is Batman goes to Arkham Asylum because the Joker has like a hostage situation going on, and he just has like these weird little encounters with like, first of all, the Joker, and then he like goes and sees Two-Face, and then he like goes and sees a bunch of other like characters that we know and love from the Batman franchise. But like, it is just so weird. It's supposed to be like a dark, edgy, psychological dive into Batman's psyche and into all of these villains' brains and like, why are they like this? Like, it came out in 1989, so it was like a moment for its time. In 2022, it's a lot. Like, it's very, my girlfriend read it as well, and I asked her if she liked it. She gave it a 2.5, and she said it was just a little too, like, sick and twisted, in, like, a weird, like, trying way too hard way, and I would agree with that. It was a lot. The illustrations were cool. It was very creepy. It provided, like, a strange, dreamlike experience, so I appreciated it for all of those reasons, and I appreciate it for, like, what it did for its time, but, like, it just wasn't great. And also, oh my fucking god, let me show you. I'll put it up on the screen as well. This book, the reading experience sucked. It hurt my fucking eyes because everything the Joker says is printed in like this red, like very like thin, weird font that makes it like impossible to read. I was reading it in bed with like a decent amount of light going on, and it was so impossible to read at night. I had to read it like during daytime with bright light, but then also like the pages were really glossy, so that made it difficult to read as well. So like the reading experience of this book sucked. I gave this book a 2.5. I appreciated what it was trying to do. I appreciated like what was going on. I love Batman, so like that made it easier for me to like. But like, I would not really recommend this. I'll probably talk about it in my May wrap up, but a little sneak peek. I've been reading more Batman comics since, and the other one I've read so far is Batman Earth 1, and that's like a recent story. That like blew this out of the water, like so much better. Next, I read The Road by Cormac McCarthy. So many people have told me to read this. This has been on my TBR for like years now. I haven't seen the movie either. Maybe I'll watch it. But here's the thing. I'm not gonna say liked. This book was really fucking good, but so emotionally exhausting. Like, do you ever read a book where you are like, wow, that was fantastic, but you would like never recommend it to anybody because you like don't want to put them through the pain that you've been through? That's how I feel about The Road. Cause like, oh my god. Ugh. It follows a man and his son in this like post-apocalyptic America. I don't know like when it's set. It doesn't really matter. It also doesn't really matter that it's set in the apocalypse, because at its core, it is about the relationship between father and son, and about how like humans interact with each other when like the pillars of society are taken away. It was bleak. It was rough. It was like The Walking Dead if it was like the most depressing thing you've ever read in your life. It was disturbing. It was gross. It did have cannibals, which is like something that I love in my horror, something I love in my literature. So that was fun. But reading experience, boo. So sad. I gave it a 4 out of 5, which sounds weird, but it was a great book. Like, it did exactly what it set out to do. It did a lot in a short time. It was a relatively short book, but so sad, so disturbing, so depressing. 4 out of 5, but like, okay, next is another part of my like graphic novel kick that I'm on right now, and that is Harrow County Omnibus 1. So it collects like volumes 1 through 6 of the comic or something like that. This was great. I've been really in the mood for horror lately. Sometimes I go through periods where I feel like I've read like every horror novel that has ever existed. So this was a great reprieve from that. This was rural, southern, folk horror, which I fucking love. It was also historical fiction. Like, I think it took place in like America in like the 1920s or 30s or something like that. It follows a girl named Emmy who lives in a rural southern town, and she finds out that she is the descendant of a very, very powerful witch. It does not end there though, because she finds out that like there are supernatural creatures, integrated into like every part of this town. I don't want to give like too much away from there because there's a lot going on in this book. It goes into lots of different like subtopics and little sub-stories. It kind of feels episodic in a way, but it felt so interesting and fresh. The illustrations were really cool. I'll put some of it up there. There's lots of like classic horror moments that I really enjoyed. I kind of feel like this is a mix of like Fear Street, the like trilogy series that came out on Netflix, and We Have Always Lived in the Castle, and also like The Witch a little bit. I don't know. That feels like a bold comparison, but I feel like if you're into those things, you'll be like pretty into this. I feel like I could have used like a little more character development and like a little more depth from some of these characters, but it was a great read. I really enjoyed it. Great little horror comic. Wonderful. I gave it a 4 out of 5. The second to last book that I read in April was Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones, which like if you've been here for a while, I've had this for a while. I started reading it in my last video. I read it way back in my try a chapter vlog and like really loved the first chapter, but it was just like a little heavy, so I put it off. Finally got around to it, and it was wonderful. 4 out of 5 stars. Stephen Graham Jones is one of my favorite authors, and this like definitely did not disappoint. It follows a young indigenous kid living in a trailer park. He moved away from the reservation with his mom and his little brother after his father kind of mysteriously died. And one day he like goes up to get a glass of water or something in the middle of the night, and he thinks he sees the ghost of his father. And it kind of just goes from there and follows him kind of coming to terms with that and like trying to see him again. And it is really heavy, in a good way though. It is a beautifully written ghost story about grief and our relationship with family, and I don't know, kind of like living in like a lower class situation, which I really related to. It was beautifully written, it was haunting, it was soul crushing in like the best way possible, and so I rated it a 4 out of 5. And lastly, for this month, I read Welcome to Dead House by R.L. Stine. And this is in preparation for a video that I'm doing, so like I don't want to talk about it too much. You're going to see a lot of Goosebumps books popping up on Goodreads and in my May wrap up though, so like not going to talk about it that much besides that. But I did read Welcome to Dead House. It is the first book in the Goosebumps series, and I rated it a 3 out of 5. It was fun, it was lighthearted, it's kind of exactly what you would expect. I liked the twist. I have watched this episode of the show like a million times, but it was still really fun. It is about 2 siblings and their family that move into this strange, creepy house in like a weird, creepy town, and it kind of just goes from there. It's called Welcome to Dead House, so like I'm sure you can kind of see where this is going. It was really fun. I enjoyed it. 3.5. Not my favorite Goosebumps book, but it's a solid one. So that is everything that I have for you today. That's everything I read in April. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you liked this video, feel free to like and subscribe down below. I am out of school for the summer and I have a lot more free time, so I'm hoping to upload some more videos. If you have anything that you want to see, let me know. I'm going to do a dark nonfiction and like death positive book recommendation video soon. I'm also thinking about doing a recommendation video if I get like enough questions from people. So I got a lot of fun things coming this summer. Definitely some vlogs as well, monthly wrap-ups, all of that good stuff. So yeah, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate you being here, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye!